I got my iced coffee. I got my eyes. All right, call me lazy, but I enjoy fair trade, organic, instant coffee. It's affordable, it's easy, and I don't need your judgment. Today's episode is brought to you by the word empty, containing nothing, having none of the usual or appropriate contents. Empty, when you look within and find nothing.
Always been my belief that the best writers are always the ones who are not assholes.
Oh, hey, CNFers, it's CNF Pod, the creative nonfiction podcast, a show where I speak to badass people about telling true stories. I'm Brendan O'Mara. Pete Croatto, author of From Hang Time to Prime Time, a freelance writer whose work has appeared in the New York Times, Grantland, RIP, GQ, Philly Mag. No, RIP is not a magazine, though I imagine it is, but everyone who talks about Grantland says RIP. The Ringer just isn't the same. And Pete has also written for Pointer, as well as journalism adjacent stuff like advertorials, brand writing, trade magazines. That's really how you make your buck. Not only is Pete a great writer and reporter, but he's an advocate for great reporting and great writing. A celebratory voice that, in my opinion, we can use far more of. Yeah, I ended that sentence in a preposition. What are you going to do about it? While I have your undivided attention, I will be moving my newsletter from Substack to Beehive. It's a more traditional newsletter delivery service in the mold of MailChimp or one of the other ones. Constant Contact, I don't know. I don't trust Substack long term. I have my reasons. I deleted my Rage Against the Algorithm newsletter on Substack. I still hold a account, if you will, with Substack for notes. I'm probably going to divorce myself of that soon. So the newsletter, it's solely on the Beehive now. So if you've already subscribed, no interruption in service. But the way you need to sign up for it is to either go to rageagainstthealgorithm.beehive.com. That's BEEHIIV.com, or go to brendanamara.com for show notes to this episode, blog posts, and to sign up for the Rage Against the Algorithm newsletter. First of the month, no spam. So far as I can tell, you can't beat it. If you dig the show, we're always looking for nice reviews on Apple Podcasts, so the wayward CNFer might say shit. I'll give that a shot. I don't know who Brendan is, but, well, I see that he's spoken with David Grant. Oh, that must be cool. I mean, that's nice. Laura Hillenbrand from way back in the day. I remember her. Brendan talked to them. Can't be a total idiot. Shout out to Athletic Brewing, the best damn non-alcoholic beer out there. Not a paid plug. You know that by now. I'm a brand ambassador, and I want to celebrate this amazing product. If you head to athleticbrewing.com, use the promo code BrendanO20 at checkout, you get a nice little discount on your first order. I don't get any money, and they're not an official sponsor of the podcast, though if they want to. I just get points for swag and beer. Give it a shot. So it was great to catch up with Pete because he's roughly 3 years out from the release of his first book, and believe me, it will be his first book, From Hang Time to Prime Time. Sort of a real fun book about the NBA and the watershed moment of when it went from one thing to another. One from relative obscurity to worldwide, world-conquering power. It's just a fun toe-tap and good read. And Pete was in a conflicted headspace about its reception and how writing one book doesn't necessarily guarantee you the opportunity to write another. How thinking that the writing of a book will complete you, and it's kind of like this endpoint or this end game, and if anything, it's just the book does not make you whole. Ultimately, the book is merely on the continuum of whatever your writer path is through this career. It's definitely not like an A to Z kind of career. It is just all over the place. I mean, you go into different physical dimensions. It is not merely a two-dimensional journey. There is Z-axis shit going on. There is fourth dimension stuff going on. I don't know what I'm talking about. He saw it as an opportunity to learn, to improve, a stepping stone. As I say in this conversation, a book, it's really just it's a great business card. Yeah, odds are we're not going to make a lot of money or any from writing a book, but to say that you've got something like that, it's a great business card. I love talking to writers between books, so this was a really nice chat. And here's just a little thing. I figure since maybe some people don't even know, I tend to have a parting shot at the end of the show. I just assume. You know what happens when you assume. So I'm just going to say today's parting shot, to give you a little teaser, is just about writerly detours. And if you want to hang around, I'm going to talk about writerly detours. And you can learn about what I mean by that by sticking around at the end of the show. But until then, I sure as hell hope you enjoyed this conversation with me and my pal, Pete Croatto. Talk about it. And I love the period in between books.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny. I don't think many people don't really talk about the in between time, and I think there's an assumption that well, you write one book and then you're immediately on to book 2, 3, 4, 5, and what have you. And as I've done this longer, that's not the case. I think there are plenty of people that write one book and that's all they do, and they move on to other things in their career, or people, and there are people like the Mark Harrises and Jeff Pearlmans of the world who write a book every 2 to 3 years. So everyone's different, and I think there's the thing is there's no right way to do this, and I think if this conversation can illuminate that, that'd be great, because I think people think, well, I write a book and from here on and from that point on everything's gravy, and it's not. I mean, you still have to be flexible and be open to what comes your way, and I think you need to not have these static ideas of what's going to happen down the road, because no one really knows.
Yeah, it can feel like, especially for people like us who are primarily sports writers, or we like, that's the sandbox we like to play in the most is sports. And we look at someone like a Jeff Pearlman who seems to be able to chain smoke these incredible, meaty, juicy biographies, and like that is a measure of success, and probably one that you and I would love to aspire to. But it could be that is just the Jeff Pearlman railroad track, and it's just like we have to kind of find our own in that ecosystem.
No, I mean that you absolutely have to. I think that, again, if you can certainly take inspiration from writers and how they work and what they do and their approach, but the minute you think, well, that has to be my path, that's the moment where you get into trouble, because you're chasing something that you can't catch up to. There are so many people who would love to be the next John Feinstein or the next Jack McCallum or the next Susan Orlean or whomever, but if you get so obsessed about chasing that path, you're not going to be the best version of who you can be. So but yeah, I'm with you. I would love to be in a position like Jeff, where every 2 years you write an amazing book, and it gets a lot of attention and a lot of completely justified praise. But that's not everyone's going to get on that boat. Very few people are. I think I don't. I'm trying to think. I don't mean who. How many Jeff Pearlmans are there? How many John Feinsteins are there? They're very, just by saying that, there are very few. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not a cottage industry. And that's probably for the best, because again, like I can't imagine a bunch of people writing these meaty biographies that require 800 interviews. It's not for everybody. I think most people would burn out or decide to pursue the priesthood if they wanted to go in that direction. So
yeah, the whole the whole thing about having like I reading the acknowledgments of Perlman's Bo Jackson book especially, and it's just like he interviewed 700 people
Hmm.
for it, and that's a certain standard that I think people like us kind of will hold ourselves to, and that's kind of one of the details that only people like us really notice, and
Hmm.
and so you kind of hold yourself to that standard, like, oh my God, for this book I'm writing, I need to interview hundreds and hundreds of people to show that I did the work. And
Yeah.
it is a nice benchmark to get as many voices as possible, because it leads to serendipity. You'll hear things that you didn't even see coming. But sometimes you can get just as much out of 200 or 150, or maybe you just don't have time to interview 700 people, and that's okay.
No, it's look. I mean, you spoke to Wudan Yan a few weeks ago, and she mentioned that whole fallacy of reporting to the ends of the earth, and sometimes that's required. Absolutely, I think, but sometimes you don't need that much, and you can absolutely over-report, and you can absolutely get so bogged down in details that you lose the main thread of the story. Years ago, I was talking to somebody who talked about working with someone at the Washington Post who was just an incredibly efficient sports writer, where they could just interview two or three people and those were the best people. They always had the best source, the best quotes, the best anecdotes, the best revelations. And that writer was David Remnick, who now is the editor of the New Yorker. And
Mm.
he had this incredible knack, according to this person I spoke to. I don't remember who it was, to just get the best out of the fewest number of sources. So you're right. There's no law that says you have to interview 500 people or 300 people or even 200 people. I know with your Prefontaine book, you're up to how many interviews now? 60, 65. That's a really healthy number. And if 65 or 75 or 85 is the number to get the best book possible, that's more than enough. That's something to be proud of.
Yeah, I have a problem of holding myself to that number of quantity being quality, and I think to a certain extent that is true when trying to do a juicy
Yeah.
biography, but the guy died when he was 24,
Right.
in 1975.
Mm-hmm.
He lived a very short life. He did and yeah, influence a lot of people, and he left an impression on a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And but also I also have a pretty short runway. And if I had another year, yeah, maybe I do get to 200, 300 in that neighborhood. But at what point would I just be circling myself? Because some of the conversations I've had, when I go and be like, who else should I talk to? I'd be like, talk to X, Y, and Z. I'm like, oh, cool. I've already spoken to them at least once, and so I'm getting a lot of repeat already in that. So that's validating in one sense, but also like you still want to find some of those less interviewed people, some of the people you ran against in high school who might have beaten him in high school, who
Yeah.
have never been on the record. And they're some of the people who are the most excited to talk,
Yeah.
and who have given some of the most illuminating anecdotes that have been, they're just kind of like tickled to be folded into the Prefontaine lore where other people have ignored them.
Yeah. No, it's the people that are in the margins are always the best. And then I've talked about this a bunch, but people will always ask me with the book, well, oh, who is the most exciting person or the best person you spoke to in reporting? And I think they always expect me to say, like, Julius Irving or George Gervin or some basketball player that they remember from their childhood. But it's always somebody who they've never heard of. It's always the administrative assistant, who worked 2 years in the NBA offices, or somebody who worked for the Denver Nuggets for 15 years. It's and and those people, you're right, they never, no one ever bothers to talk to them about them because they're not quote unquote stars, they're not bold faced names. And those are the best people to talk to because they haven't told their stories ad nauseum. They're not indifferent to a reporter's questions. They're not going to just rehash the same old anecdotes. So yeah, it's great. And those quotes, those stories are always what make the narrative sing. I think it's I don't know. I'm sure you'll talk to Phil Knight. I'm sure you'll talk to some other people who are quote unquote big names. But I'm sure the best quotes will be from that runner who ran against Prefontaine when he was a junior in high school, or whomever. I mean, those are the people that make up the fabric of a life. and it's not just the people that everyone's read about in the sports page. I love being in that discovery process. I just finished a big feature, and that was the big fun of it was just to get those little nuggets and string them together. And it's just, again, one pearl isn't much, but you get a whole bunch of them, they turn into a mighty fine necklace. And that's what I love about reporting and digging, is that you get enough pearls, and you can create something that's pretty remarkable. And that's really all that it is. It's all reps. I remember the first time writing, long going, quote unquote, long form, and writing, 2,000 words, and it felt like I was, climbing Everest on my hands and knees. And the more that you do it, the easier it gets, and it becomes a job. It becomes like, okay, well, I need to get 1,000 words today, because I have X, Y, and Z to do tomorrow. I have these things to do. And when you're able to find that balance between it being a passion and a profession, that's when you really hit the sweet spot. And I mean, you've done this for so long. It's innate now, I would think, with you, with a lot of writers. It's just, okay, this is what I do. I get up, I write, then I repeat the next day. But it's exciting. I'm so eager to read the book, and I'm sure it's going to be great. And you clearly care about the subject too, which is just, it'll show on the page. And that's it's this is the good times. And it may not feel like it, but it's going to be great.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, it's what's been especially because I do get like the 3 a.m. voice and knocks on my door, and it's almost every night. And it's one of those things where, and I have started the writing to some extent because that deadline is close, but it's also, my editor was just like, you do want to start some of the writing because you want to see where some of the holes are,
Mm-hmm.
and see where I call it like laying down road and seeing where potholes emerge. And that way, re-reporting certain things, you can go back far more targeted. But still, some things in my head are just a bit mushy. Like, I can't see I like to sometimes be able to see the structure in my head,
Right.
and then proceed. But everything now, it still seems very, yeah, just soft and mushy, and it's sometimes hard to. There used to be these toys in the 80s. It was like a rubber tube. It looked like a worm, and you would ever played with one of those, and you would like squeeze it, and it would kind of,
Mm-hmm.
you couldn't get your grip on it because it would kind of like squeeze out either the top of your hand or the bottom of your hand. It was just like and that's kind of what the structure of the book feels to me right now. And sometimes it can be hard to report into write, or just to even start working, because you just can't, like, sometimes I have a hard time envisioning it, and having a better map. I feel I just need a better map, and I'm still forming the map. And I think once that map is properly written out, so to speak, I'll be able to really get some momentum.
I think once you go through the transcripts, it'll start to it'll start to solidify. Like, once you hold the transcripts in your hand and start highlight, this works for me. You start highlighting and writing notes. I mean, it all starts to come together. But yeah, I mean, it's mushy, but it's better than there not being
Right.
anything. If you were thinking, if you thought to yourself, well, what do I have, and your mind was a blank, that would be a big problem.
Right.
But you have something that's, that's nebulous, and coming into shape, which is good. That's a good thing. It's a big deal to write something this big, and to write and have all these ideas, and to try to corral them into one tube of thought that makes its way to the reader. It's exciting, but it's also fun, and a little scary. And yeah, this is what we all kind of, spend our lives trying to do. And it's great that you get a chance to do it again. I mean, I would love to write another book, and I hope I get to do it soon, to just, to just keep at it. It's the challenge. It's such a wonderful, scary, lovely challenge. And I don't know if there's a better way to describe
Yeah,
it.
yeah, it certainly is. It is terrifying, and especially when you're talking to people that have spoken on the record a bit, and a lot of people I talk to be like, I don't know how you're going to come up with anything new that hasn't already been said. And I haven't run into any adversarial people, only one. But of the dozens of people I've interviewed, most people are more than happy to talk, and they're really happy to, for the most part, because they want to
Yeah.
honor Steve's legacy. It's 50
Right.
years since he died, and he still matters, and they're happy to, try to go down memory lane and sometimes dig up more memories that they almost never knew existed. Uh, but yeah,
Yeah.
but it is scary sometimes to be like, all right, you gotta corral all this information, you gotta make it coherent, and you gotta make it feel fresh, and that's that's always the challenge when retreading a subject matter, be it Jonathan Ive going with Martin Luther King. I haven't read that book, but I mean,
Mhm.
he ran into those challenges. Like, what more can be said about MLK? And he wrote a gigantic biography, and he found a way.
Yeah. Yeah. There's always, I mean, there's always a way. I think there's always a way to cover something differently. There's always a way to write about something differently. And, again, I mean, I'm sure but I'm sure, when you pitched this book and you thought about it for forever about how to portray him, what the media had gotten wrong. There's always a way to make something your own. And that's, again, that's part of the whole beautiful, horrible, nauseating challenge of it is to try and make it your own and make it something that's worthwhile for readers with anything, any topic.
Yeah, yeah. And when I was talking to off mic, I occasionally talk with Bronwyn Dickey. She's kind of like a
Yeah.
cheerleader in my corner. Sometimes we talk at length. And in the first conversation we had, she was like, it doesn't have to be like the book of record on him. It just has to be the next one in the river. You're standing on the shoulders of
Yeah.
people who have written about him before, and then maybe down the road, someone will stand on your shoulders and find other things. Like, you don't have to be the
Yeah.
be all end all. It's just like you're just putting your particular stamp on this story at this moment in time. And I was like, okay, that's a really astute way of framing it.
No, yes, that's, I mean, that's a wonderful way to look at it. And there's a quote that I always go back to. It's you may have heard it, but it's from Megan Dahm, who's an essayist, and she wrote once, and I've never forgotten this quote. She wrote, "In the history of the world, there's never been a complete story told." That has always made me feel, that's always been a comfort to me, because you're never going to get the entire complete story on something. So that's always been a comfort to me, because well, I can't tell the whole story. It's impossible, but it's also a way to tell another side of the story. So yeah, I mean, it's what she said was very spot on. And I think Glenn Stout mentions on this show. I mean, you can control your effort, and that's what it comes down to. If you can write the best possible book and put the most you can into it, that's all that you can do.
In emails that we bandy back and forth, I loved what you said about just talking about the experience of having written your first book, and then you were seeing
Hmm.
as the progress from either one to the next, or whether you get to write one again. You're seeing it as a continuum, not a condemnation. I would love for you to just like kind of run with that a little more, because that was such a great way of framing the headspace you're at.
Yeah, I thought that writing a book would sort of just, be a life-changing thing, and it really isn't. It's really about another set of experiences that you use to build your career going forward. And that's the key with any piece of writing. I'm no longer under the impression that anything that I write is going to stop the world in its tracks and get all the kids in the world to hold hands and sing kumbaya. It's, to me, it's about learning what I can do to keep doing this, because this is a very, very precarious profession. There were a lot of times in my life where I didn't think I'd be writing at all. There were times where I thought I was done with this and I was going to be doing something else. I am very, very fortunate to keep doing this. And I look at each thing that I do, whether it's a book, whether it's a Q&A, whether it's a lengthy profile or whatever. It's a learning opportunity. It's an opportunity to get better. And with a book, it's the same thing. A book isn't a gold star. It isn't a it doesn't make you better or special. It's another opportunity to learn, to get better, and it's an opportunity to continue your career. So that's how I look at it. I mean, I used to think that writing a book was just sort of, oh, well, it's going to be this and it's going to be that, it's going to be such a special occasion, and it really isn't. It's an opportunity to apply what you've learned, to write something to the best of your ability, and it's also an opportunity to get better. And I think that's how I look at it now with everything. And I think it's made me a happier, more well adjusted person. I don't know if any writer is ever at that point, but for me, it's been that
Yeah.
way.
The book in a lot of ways is like it's a really good business card, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a theory that every time you write something, you get a key, and that key unlocks a door, but you don't know what door it's going to unlock, and you don't know when that key is going to work. And I think when you write a book, it is very much like a business card. And I think it's also like getting like 3 or 4 sets of keys that may open a door to something else or may not, and you have to just keep trying. Like there's nothing is really is nothing is given to you. I think when you write something, I always had this expectation that if you wrote for a high profile place, that that was going to be a calling card or a springboard to something. And in many cases, it's not. It's another business card. It's another key that you can use, that you can put in your key ring to try and open a few more doors. And that attitude sort of helped me. I know it sounds very, very, it's a very reductionist way to look at it, but it's really helped me because it's gives some order to what can be kind of an unstable business
Oh, for
sometimes.
sure. And I think taking it even a step farther is it's a key to open up a door for you. And then as you elevate your sort of your levels of responsibility to the community at large, it's a way for you to leave the door open for someone else maybe coming up behind you also.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of paying it forward or providing advice. I mean, it's because God knows I've gotten so much help from other writers, and I still do. So yeah. I mean, if I can save someone some grief and provide a shortcut, I'm happy to do it. I don't. There's no downside to it. I really do think that this is a business, an industry that's built on camaraderie, and it's built on relationships. And always been my belief that the best writers are always the ones who are not assholes. Like
Yeah.
I've you know David Grand, not an asshole. Susan Orlean, not an like. They're all generous, thoughtful people who will happily lend a hand, to a writer with a question or who's confused. And I like to do that. I would like to be someone who can, you know, help out when possible. And if I have the more, and as you put it so eloquently, the more keys I have, the more doors I can open for someone to get in. So they're not spending, a year or two banging on a door, in futility.
Now, I think there's a way to ask this question. Some people might ask, all right, so you've got the one book in your back pocket, and some people might be like, all right, how would you approach it differently? And I think that's not a valuable question. I think the better thing is like, what lessons did you learn from doing from hang time to prime time that you're eager to sort of deploy for for your follow up when that chance arises?
That's a good question. There are many things. I would spend more time making sure the prose is right. I would spend more time just being careful. I think I was so obsessed with trying to hit the deadline that it became very. I didn't take the time to make the prose as tight as it
Hmm.
could be, to make the prose sing the way it should. I'm very happy with the book. I mean, this is not a knock against the book. I think the book is. I'm proud of the book. I think the book will hold
Yeah,
up.
such a fun
I'm
book.
happy
Yeah.
with it. Thank you. But are there way? Could the book have been cleaner, leaner, more accurate? Absolutely. And I think that's what I talk about when I talk about a team. That's what I mean is that I learned things from that book that I will carry on with my own writing in smaller outlets. And when I write a second book, and one thing will be to take the time to make the prose right. And that's the advantage of when you write quickly. You can take the time to go back and read and tweak. I should have been more careful on that side. I also would have leaned more on the people around me, meaning I would have had people read chapters after I read them. I would have hired fact checkers, because fact checking a book that size with that many interviews and references on my own was a lot. So I would have loved to have a second pair of eyes on that. I know that you interviewed an author
Yeah,
recently
Michael Finkel.
who said that
Yeah.
yeah, he spends what, like, I think it's between, I think, want to say 5 and 8 thousand for a good
Yeah,
fact
and he used
checker.
2 on his
Um,
latest book too, because yeah.
yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I can do that, but I'm sure I can hire somebody who can, at least help me in some of the more information packed places. So those are the two big lessons, which, or three big lessons, would be to to take my time and to just, really put more of my effort into it and more of my resources into it. Because look, I mean, if you're writing a book, you're not doing this to make money. A lot of people do, but I think for a lot of people, money really isn't the end goal here. I think the end goal is to have a business card, or to have a product that you can present to the world to say, hey, I can do this, and here's my output. So I probably would have put a little bit more money into making sure that I had the best possible product out there. I know that sounds very MBA-ish and very very dry and practical, but I think there's a practical side to this that I think needs to be approached. I mean, yeah, you should be creative and you should be inventive when you write anything, but there's also a part of any writing where you need to be a business person, and you need to think about, okay, well, how can this be better in very practical, pragmatic ways. So I would definitely, you know, I would definitely, so the approaches that I have with book two, if I write a second book, are definitely more pragmatic and more scheduling and more about making the product better and using time efficiently. So yeah, I mean, it's the style stuff is my style is my style, and I'm constantly working on making that better. But the lessons in the book that I keep coming back to are very much the drab, day to day practical applications.
And I think I've heard Seth Godin say something to the effect of, as freelancers or independent contractors, whatever, we tend to be the worst bosses of ourselves. And,
Oh,
yeah,
totally.
like if we had a boss like this at at a different company, we'd find a new job. Um, so it's like, so for you over the years, and especially maybe since you were writing the book as well as your freelancing and so forth, and, how have you learned to be a better boss to yourself?
Yeah, I mean, that's really true. And for the longest time, I was the shittiest boss imaginable. Like, I would just stare at my computer screen and just try to will words to come up on the screen and try to get something done. It was just such a fruitless endeavor. I will tell you one thing, how I've been a better boss is that I mean, this happened about 10 years ago, is that I got into therapy, and that
Hmm.
really helped because I needed to slow down. I needed to talk to someone other than my wife, or whatever I was comfortable telling my parents. So I so I so finding getting real about the fact that I needed to speak with someone, I needed to be better with myself, and seeking therapy, and eventually taking antidepressants was a huge help. And I can't stress this enough. If anyone out there is feeling overly stressed, or constantly pressured or harried, it's okay to ask for help. Like, you don't have to gut through it. And for the longest time, I tried to gut through those feelings, and it was a lot like using scotch tape and paper clips to fix a broken leg. it was horribly ineffective and even damaging. And I think that ties into the second point, which is I'm not treating this as some sort of running the phalanx Coliseum, Coliseum fighting the lion uh, thing. I mean, I'm putting words on a page. I'm not diffusing bombs. So I kind of put things in perspective, and I take breaks. I try to take a lot of breaks. If I'm not up to doing something, I don't do it. And I think also helping, what has also helped matters is having a family, having a child, because that child looks at me, my daughter, our daughter, I should say, looks at me as a model to live their to find their way in the world, to live in the world. And I can't do that if I'm a stark raving lunatic,
Yeah.
because I can't, because someone didn't accept my pitch, or I can't get the sentence right. So it's a matter of just getting out of the shell, and that means visiting people, talking on the phone, maintaining a human connection, because that gets very easily lost in freelance writing, because I'm by myself all day. I'm in an office, and it can get a little it can get a little Jack Torrance in The Shining, if I don't watch my steps. So I try and just practice self-care and self-compassion, and I try to remember that my actions and what I'm doing don't affect me anymore. They affect my wife, they affect my daughter, and I also have a circle of family and friends who care about me. So I don't want to make their lives harder, and that's something that took me far, far too long to realize.
Mm. Yeah, that's yeah, that I imagine that once you surrendered to that, it it kind of opened things up for you in ways you're like, oh wow, it doesn't have to be this difficult anymore.
No, it doesn't. And that was the thing. I always used to think that pressure was a gift.
Hmm.
That, okay, well, if I always assume that I'm one false move away from disaster, or if I get complacent, I'm gonna set myself up for a Tony Montana like fall. Once I realized that I didn't need that pressure, that pressure was just imaginary, that I didn't need that to do a good job, it really opened my eyes. It's, and I'm still dealing with that. I'm never going to be 100% worry free, and I think and that's the same thing with writing. Like, I'm never going to be a perfect writer. I'm never going to be. I'll be as the best writer I can be, but I'm never going to be perfect. I'm never going to be worry free. I'm never going to, be a happy go lucky sprite. But I can work on being the happiest version of myself. And I think when I realized that, a lot of the work didn't the work became less burdensome. And I think my wife was happier with that. I think my daughter was happier with that, and and by extension, I'm happier because of that. So yeah, like it's it was important to get that clarity, and I got it in the nick of time.
Well, that's great to hear, and it's great to hear you on the other side of that, realizing the possibility of that next chapter, getting through those brackish waters and getting to the fresh side is yeah,
Yeah.
that's great to hear.
No, I appreciate that. No, I mean, I couldn't have written a book. I couldn't have written the book without
Hmm.
therapy. I mean, I couldn't have written the book if I hadn't taken care of myself, and or try to take care of myself. And I mean, yeah, if I had gotten this book deal when I was 25 or 26, that would have been a major problem. I think it would have affected my life, and not in a positive way. So if I sound a little kumbaya-ish, a little Pollyanna-ish, it's with good reason, because I think I'm still trying to figure out what works best for me, and what I can do to enjoy the work that I'm doing and be passionate about it, without working myself into a lather. Again, that's a continuous process. I don't think it's, for me at least, it's going to be something that I have to monitor. And the fact that I get to do that, and have a happy family and do what I love. I mean, it's a gift, and I try to look at it that way.
And I love in our correspondence, how you wrote that, the chance to get better excites me to no end. And
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
and I really love that sentiment. And I wonder what you would identify as things that you feel like you can continually get better at and tighter at, and maybe things that on this day you are far better than you were, 5 years ago or even 10 years ago.
I don't know. It's everything.
Yeah,
I don't know if there's really one thing that I need to get better at. I feel like I have to get better at everything.
yeah,
I have to write tighter sentences. I have to, not rely on quotes. I have to, make sure that every fact that comes in is verified, and it's everything. That doesn't bother me because I think it's such a gift to be in an occupation that's never boring.
yeah,
I don't know. I can't really think of a. I'm sure someone will say, well, you still use block quotes, or oh, you should stop using butts in the word button leads, and I'm sure that'll come, but to me, it's just I feel like I can get better at everything, and I feel like that's such the joy of writing, is to be in that position where you can always figure out something new about yourself and try to improve. That's the beauty
yeah,
of it. And that's the thing. I think the moment that I say, well, I'm as good as I can be, I think that's it. I think then that's I should find something else. And that's why I love working with really good editors who can show me things, or who can reveal shortcomings, or things that I've missed. It's a gift. I mean, so that's why I want to work with really good editors, because it's like taking a master class, and I never want to be in the position where I just say stet to every suggestion an editor has. I mean, I think when I get to that point, when I get to the point where I don't want to improve, that's when I will be very, very concerned. But I'm not at that point yet, so that's good. I think I have a little more time to
yeah,
go.
yeah. And the thing is about improvement and skill development is that it's so fluid that you almost don't recognize when you've gotten better. It's just if you're doing it right and you're just learning little by little and you're writing a little by little and you're interviewing a little by little every single day, over 5 years, over 10 years, suddenly you're like, oh, I'm pretty good at this. I can still get better, but it's not like on one day you were mediocre and then on Tuesday you were great. It happens. It's like evolution. It happens very slowly by natural selection.
And it happened. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It happens over years and years and years, and it is so gradual. And I think that's why a lot of people get frustrated with writing, because they think they want to be good right out of the box. They want to be terrific and write these crisp, wonderful sentences, or they want to write these long, elaborate paragraphs um, that fall like streamers on a parade. And it's just, it takes a lot of work to get there. The progress is so slow. That's why it turns off so many people, because they want to be good right away. And I'm the same way. I don't think, I'm 45. I don't really have a lot of time to get better at something. If I'm starting something, I want to be good at it right away. And that impatience can kill you. I don't blame anyone who doesn't want to do this, because it's not fun. I mean, it's not fun to read something 5 years ago and be like, oh yeah, I'm slightly better than I was. I'm slightly better now than I was in 2018.
Yeah.
um, but I don't know, but that's what makes it. I just the fact that you can see that improvement with time and investment. That is the juice for me. I love to see that. But yeah, I can absolutely understand why someone just doesn't want to be bothered with it, because yeah, it's not automatic. It's not instantaneous. But I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm not good. Maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was at this. It's such a lengthy process that I can absolutely understand why people don't want to do this. But I'm in it for the long haul. I love it, and yeah, I'm in love with the whole process of it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's one of those things where if you feel like you need to, like, if you're getting in shape, you feel like you need to, drop some fat off your frame just to take some weight off your joints and stuff. To be told that,
Mhm.
try to lose like a half a pound a week for a year. The things you're not going to really
Mhm.
feel that coming off your body, but like in a year's time, that'll be 26 pounds. And you'd be like, wow, that
Exactly.
is a lot. In a blink, that's a lot. But over the course of time, you don't really feel it. But the end product is there, and you're like, oh, I'm objectively a bit leaner, and I'm feeling a bit better. But you almost want it to be like the weight vest. Like, I just want this to be ripped off me, and so I can feel the how good it feels right away. But you really just have to be so
Mhm.
incrementally disciplined and focused. And then, yeah, over time, suddenly you notice, like, oh yeah, my the way I might be asking questions, the way it might be guiding an interview, the way I might be constructing a sentence might just get a bit more efficient. I just more active. I naturally write in the active voice. So down the road, I'm not going to
Mhm.
have
Mhm.
to worry about trimming all those helping verbs. They just kind of naturally edit out of my head and into my fingertips. But that comes through 15 years of doing it every day.
Yeah, and it comes also through 15 years of reading
Yeah.
every day. Of okay, reading writers who are better than I am, okay, and it never stops. It never ever stops. And some people might see that as a death sentence, but I see that as, again, as a wonderful way to make a living, because it's never boring. There's always a different way to get better. There's always a different way to challenge yourself, and that to me, that's fun for me. Some people might hear that and think, oh God, this is, I'd rather do anything else. But I love that, and the way that you explained it with losing a half a pound every week, that's exactly what it's like. It's very disciplined. It's very painstaking. But the fact that I don't look at it that way is, that's the key. I think if you look at it as, okay, well, you and you alone can control how good you become at this. I think that to me is the fun of it, and I don't look at it as really as work. But it is work. I mean, but I never see it that way. Do you? I mean, do you see it as work?
No, I see it as study, as film
Yeah.
study. I think of great football coaches or quarterbacks who are just they have some like, no matter how much talent or intelligence they have, they're really wedded to hitting play and rewind on the
Hmm.
tape, and so I think with just the rigor of study and understanding why something is happening, and then seeking inspiration elsewhere. Like, I'm a longtime Patriots fan, grew up New England, and so say what you will
Hmm.
about Belichick, but he's willing to learn from the college game to, so he
Yeah.
turned his eye to a different area of study to get better at the program. Andy Reid is the same way. These guys
Right.
are open to continual education and study, be it football, and for us, be it as becoming a better reader and a better writer. It's constantly evolving, and I think it's great, and it's just turn our eyes to new voices, to other areas that challenge our own reading and challenge how we've historically read. Like, let's read some other world experience or native writers, black writers. How are
Hmm.
how are they metabolizing their experiences and conveying that on the page? And wow, like that just makes you a better person overall. Speak nothing of being a better writer.
Absolutely. I mean, you have a to me, I look at writing as and I think I've probably belabored this point, but it's just the constant opportunity to improve. And and you're right. I mean, it's to look beyond your own experience and to look beyond your own mental framework. I mean, that's a huge opportunity, and it's something that I like to do. I mean, I'm a big fan of my whole goal is, okay, well, I want to read writers who don't look like me. I don't
Yeah.
want to read so straight white men. I want to try and broaden that and read people with different backgrounds and different perspectives. And that makes you, yeah, again, makes you a better writer, and you hope a better person. And it's, again, that's why it's very hard for me to give. I can't see myself giving this up, because the chance to learn, the chance to be surprised, the chance to do something that you felt was beyond your reach. I don't think many occupations afford those opportunities, but I don't know. I'm not willing to try because I like doing this too much. Even something as boring as, writing, I don't know, writing trade magazine articles or editorials. It's the chance to do something new with that, to put a different spin on it. That's a cool thing, and not many jobs have that. If you're working on an assembly line, like you can't really do that. So I'm very, again, I'm extremely lucky to be able to make a dollar and a dime doing this. And if I can become a halfway decent person out of it, even better. But the verdict is still out on that, I think, but we'll see. I have some time left.
Well, fantastic, Pete. Well, I'm so great we were able to do this again on the mics and have one of these conversations that it kind of dives into just the everyday minutia of it, and in your experience right now, being 3 years post your first book, and thinking of what to do next and how to learn better, how to get better, learn better. I think this is a really just a fertile conversation about this sort of phase in the season of your writing career. So I'm so glad you're able to come on and share that.
No, well, thank you. I hope it was useful. I'm always afraid of talking too much and blathering on, but we'll see. Maybe, as they say, maybe you can fix it in post. I don't sound like too much of a motor mouth. But no, this is great.
Oh, very, very minimal fixing in post. And shit, I forgot to ask Pete for his recommendation for the listeners. My bad. Honestly, I have zero idea if people like that I ask that of guests, but I like it. Thanks to Pete for coming back for his third trip to the podcast. We're somehow still doing this thing. I think my favorite part of that conversation was the idea of the gradual mastery. Like, you're not bad, then good, then great. It's like you're bad, then you're less bad, and then mainly bad, but getting kind of good. And like a glacier melting on this hot, hot earth, it's just suddenly, it's like, oh, okay, it's been receding, and then it's starting to gut the earth. Oh, hold on. This is a better metaphor. Maybe it's like the growth of a mountain. Like 1,000,000 years ago, that mountain was a little hill. But you take a snapshot right now, and it's like, oh, it's taller. Maybe only a little bit taller, even after 1,000,000 years. I don't know, but growing a centimeter a year isn't gonna, change the skyline from year 1 to year 2. But you get my drift. That it's that very slow incremental change. It is geologic. Writing and improving is fucking geologic. I woke up this morning, and this is that thing that I teased at the top of the show. I woke up this morning with, God damn it. Okay, well, I woke up this morning with my usual 3 a.m. panic, staring at the ceiling fan in the darkness, wishing I was someone other than myself, and starting a writing project in my head, a short essay. It even started as a poem. But I've never written a poem in my life. Like, I don't think I have. Like, maybe when I was in high school, like when you're told to. But I think when you're studying sonnets, you're like, write a sonnet. Anyway, but I'm thinking it'd be more like a short essay, flash essay, called Peloton Instructor. And it'll just be about my long-standing body image issues, which is not exactly something dudes talk about. Women be like, cry me a river. But I've long struggled with my body image, face image, teeth image. And I think I have a funny but potentially meaningful essay about body dysmorphia. And while also being mildly to many times more than mildly annoyed by 29-year-old spin teachers giving me life lessons. Thank you. Just tell me which way to turn the dial. I don't need meaning. Anyway, the point of this is maybe this writerly detour, the side writing hustle to your main book. It might be a nice pressure release. Like, I'm overthinking the Prefontaine biography, and I'm sinking in the quicksand, man. And it's not that I'm being precious with words. It's that I'm in a constant state of high-level anxiety over retreading or regurgitating what's already been said. Have I drummed up enough new stuff? I have some new stuff, but is it enough? And capital letters, what is it I really want to say about the guy? I get to make that choice, and I struggle with feeling very much unworthy to make that determination. Like, who the hell am I to assert? But you need to be careful. Is this or other essay ideas just a shiny new toy to distract you from what you really need to be doing? Or is it truly a good exercise? When Metallica was in the studio in the late aughts, they went on tour for a few months to get out of the studio. I think they even named that. They might have done like 10 shows or something. It might even be less. And I think it was literally getting out of the studio tour, get out of the studio. Sure, for them, it's far more complicated to just up and go on the road. Like, they are an ocean liner to move, and I can't imagine the organization it takes to tour on that scale, how it fundamentally changes the economy of a city for an entire weekend. That's a point for it. To me, that's a fascinating story worth reporting, is big band comes to town and just think about it. Think about it, really. Point is, they needed a break. They get out of the studio and they played to their fans. And if anything, it was just a creative break, but a way to connect with the people that they're trying to serve. Ultimately, that's what they're about. And any good band, any good artist. So anyway, so maybe an essay or two, short story, fiction, a poem, a painting. It might be a way to refresh your cup of coffee. Like, I always love it when the server is patrolling the diner and I'm like, I can see them moving. I'm like, oh, are they going to come over to my table and ask me if I want more coffee? And then she comes over, or he, or they, I don't know. And they're like, do you want more coffee? And I'm already buzzed and I've like peed 4 times. And I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, please. Thank you. Please, more coffee. Stay wild, stay caffeinated, CNFers. And if you can't do, interview. See ya.